Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The early morning fog blanketed the small town of Maplewood like a whispered secret. As the sun strained to filter through the thick haze, the streets remained eerily quiet. It was a picturesque commune, nestled in a valley surrounded by the scarred remains of the forest, where ancient trees stood sentinel over a rich tapestry of life. But beneath the surface of tranquility lay currents of unease that would soon surface violently. On November 12, 2011, Detective Michael Harper received an urgent call while sipping his lukewarm coffee in the precinct. A body had been discovered in Wilting Creek, a shallow waterway that had earned its name for a reason. It was the lifeless form of 25-year-old Claire Porter, a beloved nurse at the Maplewood General Hospital, who had vanished without a trace 2 nights earlier. The sun broke through the clouds as Harper arrived at the scene, illuminating the stark contrast of the murky water and the vibrant orange leaves fluttering in the chill autumn breeze. He observed the officers cordoning off the area, their faces taut with the burden of what they had uncovered. Claire's body lay face down, her auburn hair fanning out like a halo. A whispered breeze seemed to carry her story away, already fading into the echoes of the past. The stark absence of violence suggested a darker narrative than mere accident tone that hinted at hidden motives and unassuming evildoers. The canvas of Maplewood was about to be splattered with the colors of despair, and Detective Harper couldn't shake the growing sense of urgency that gripped him, to unearth the truth that lay submerged before it sunk forever into the shadows. Before it sunk forever into the shadow. The victim. Claire Porter was a light in the lives of many in Maplewood. A dedicated nurse at the town's only hospital, her gentleness was as well known as her infectious laughter. She was the type of person who, regardless of the circumstances, could bring warmth into a shadowy rheumaskill that turned mundane hospital visits into vivid encounters of hope for her patients. Growing up in Maplewood, Claire had been raised by a single mother, a nurse herself, who instilled in her a deep sense of empathy and responsibility. Claire's friends often remarked that she had the innate ability to be present, to listen, and to reassure. Her small studio apartment, a stone's throw from the hospital, was a testament to her nurturing spirit, a mixture of photographs, plants, and memories of laughter-filled nights with her childhood friends. Oh, now Larry, but underneath the confident exterior, there were complexities. Rumors lingered in the hallways of Maplewood General that she was struggling to cope with the recent loss of her mother, who had succumbed to cancer only months prior. A friend would later describe it as a light dimmed too soon. Claire had often confided her fears of being consumed by grief, but those closest to her believed she was determined to channel that pain into her work. As Detective Harper dug deeper into Claire's life, it became clear that she had her share of struggles, domestic disputes with her on-again, off-again boyfriend, an unresolved bitterness lingering from her mother's illness, and a latent desire for adventure that had always beckoned her from beyond the borders of Maplewood. To the world, she was a beacon of resilience, but in truth, she carried a turbulent heart. Friends had not seen her in 2 days, leaving the remnants of a partial life behind. And as Harper pieced together the fragments of Claire's story, he realized that solving her case would mean unraveling the threads woven into her fragile existence. The investigation would uncover more than just the facts. It would draw back the curtain on the shadows creeping through the lives of those who knew her. The crime scene, the meandering path leading to Wilting Creek, was obscured by dense underbrush, a threshold into nature's stillness. As Detective Harper approached the bank, the stench of decay lingered in the damp earth, suffocating the faint hints of autumn's crispness. Officers had already canvassed the area, but the forensic team arrived just moments before Harper slipped past the yellow tape bearing the title crime scene. The sun struggled to penetrate the low-hanging clouds, casting a muted light over the eerily serene setting. Ripples danced on the surface as the creek gently lapped against the shore, disrupting the quietude that had gripped the location before Claire's body was discovered. Harper lowered himself by the water's edge, carefully documenting the scene with observations rather than notes. Claire's body was clad in the same scrub she wore to the hospital, stains marking the fabric, remnants of her last shifts. Harper focused on the details, searching for signs of struggle or violence. A subtle bruise around her wrist hinted at a struggle, though the absence of other injuries raised unsettling questions. The scene felt deliberate, as if an unseen orchestrator had carefully manipulated the elements, staging the final act of Claire's life with chilling abandon. Along the bank lay remnants of personal belongings, a crushed cell phone, its screen shattered and rendered useless, and a small silver bracelet engraved with the initial CP. It was a gift from her mother, an emblem of the love she had carried with her through life. Harper recognized the significance. He felt the weight of a life interrupted, a story abruptly ended. Crime scene technicians collected evidence with the precision of artists, painting a picture of her final moments, while Harper studied the surroundings as if they were pages in a dark novel. Patterns emerged, like shadows, stretching toward the light each glue, whispered of potential suspects, of buried secrets, and fractured relationships. Claire's death would unravel not just for her family, but for all who had touched her life, and Harper sensed that the answers lay hidden within the heart of Maplewood, waiting to be unearthed. The early investigation. It was a mix of urgency and tension. The quiet hum of the precinct echoed with the murmur of phones ringing and the rustling of paper as officers compiled their findings. He understood that the next steps would be crucial. The early investigation could set the tone for the entire case. Let's start with Claire's last known movements, Harper instructed, pushing a map across the table that highlighted the key locations around town. He illuminated the dimly lit room with his flashlight, as if focusing on the footprints left behind in the wake of tragedy. The team split off, each officer tasked with interviewing key witnesses, friends, co-workers, and acquaintances who could fill in the gaps. As Claire's colleagues from Maplewood General filed into the station for questioning, the emotional weight of the situation was palpable. Many were visibly shaken, struggling to process the loss of someone they revered. One nurse, Jenna, recounted her final interaction with Claire, recalling an unsettling conversation at the nurse's station 2 nights prior. She seemed distracted, worried about something. She had a feeling she was being watched. Jenna's voice trembled, native apprehension taking root in her expression. Harper jotted down specifics as she continued, but she brushed it off, said she was just being paranoid. The shaded glances from other witnesses began to add texture to Claire's story. Reports of a suspicious man lingering near the hospital had circulated, but no one could provide a clear description. Harper scribbled the details in his notebook, parsing through their fears, fishing for truth amidst the emotional debris. By the end of the day, the investigation painted a picture of a woman whose life had intertwined with various shadows. Harper reasoned that someone could be harboring secrets, potentially connected to Claire's nagging sense of dread. What had she encountered in her daily routine that could lead to a fatal end? The threads would reveal a tapestry of motive and betrayal waiting to unfold. As the moon rose, veiling the town in a dark shroud, Harper felt the urgency press down on him. Time was short, and the following days would be crucial in determining whether Maplewood would unearth its hidden truths or bury them forever. The dead ends. As autumn settled in, a damp chill infiltrated the air, mirroring the pervasive sense of despair that lingered over Maplewood. Detective Harper dove headfirst into the interviews, each conversation guiding him through a maze of grief and uncertainty. Days turned into a blur of late nights and unrelenting phone calls, but with each new lead came an undeniable reality. The deeper he dug, the more the trail seemed to grow cold. 3 days had passed since Claire's body was discovered, and with every flickering light in his unwavering pursuit, Harper found himself haunted by dead ends. Witnesses' accounts became a jumble of fragmented thoughts, swirling like fallen leaves swept away by the wind. As he circled back to inquire about Claire's boyfriend, Matt, he found the man withdrawn and defensive, his pallid face bearing the weight of guilt that only deepened Harper's suspicions. "We fought," Matt admitted, voice barely above a whisper, as he sat across the table, wringing his hands together. "But it was just words. I would never hurt her." A hollow conviction lingered in his eyes, but Harper couldn't ignore the resentment simmering beneath the surface. Matt had a record of minor offense, substance abuse, and public disturbances that the detective meticulously cataloged. Yet he lacked any real motive for murder, and something about his demeanor felt off, like a cornered animal desperate to conceal its fangs. With frustration mounting, Harper shifted his focus to the reports of the suspicious man near the hospital. Each lead pointed to blurry images captured on security footage, yet none solidified into a recognizable figure. Viewing the footage, the shadows moved with malevolence, a flicker of movement that was elusive, taunting him with its lack of clarity. As Claire's case continued to stagnate, whispers of doubt crept into the precinct. Doubt from both the department and the community, where people began questioning whether the small-town justice system was capable of addressing a crime born from their idyllic facade. Once a tightly knit gathering, the town was now sputtering with rumors and speculation, darkening the spirit of Maplewood further. Harper sat in the weight of heavy silence, pushing back against the frustration clawing at him. He refused to succumb to the shadows closing in around him. A realization flickered like an ember in the encroaching darkness. Sometimes the very truth that could liberate a community was buried beneath layers of denial, waiting for the right spark to ignite its unveiling. As the night deepened, a flicker of resolve ignited in Harper's gut. He knew he had to find that spark before it was too late. A break in the case. The air was heavy with the scent of rain as Detective Harper returned to the precinct, weary but determined. Outside, clouds hung low in the sky, promising a downpour, a fitting echo of the turmoil brewing within his mind. As he pushed open the door to the station, the familiar hum of phones and rustling papers greeted him like an old friend. Yet the weight of the unresolved drifted with him like an unwelcome ghost. It was mid-afternoon when Officer Nguyen approached Harper's desk. A fresh excitement etched on her face. "Detective, you need to see this." She handed him a printout from a surveillance camera placed outside a convenience store located a few blocks from the hospital. "I reviewed the footage from the past few days and flagged something unusual." Harper leaned forward, scrutinizing the images. His heart quickened as he recognized the figure loitering outside the store, a silhouette that matched the earlier accounts of the suspicious man seen near the hospital. The blurry frame twitched with the flickering light of the camera, but was undoubtedly the same individual, dressed in dark clothing with a hood pulled low over their face. With a surge of adrenaline, Harper felt the pieces beginning to align in disarray. "What time was this taken?" he inquired, his instincts sharpening. Nguyen pointed to the timestamp on the printout. "About 2 hours before Claire went missing." "But it gets better." She tapped on the next sheet, revealing an image of the blurry figure entering the store alone, then emerging minutes later, his hands stuffed deep into his pockets. Harper felt a tension unravel in his chest, a growing suspicion slithering into focus. With urgency fueling their movements, the team identified local surveillance footage from the area, determined to chase the specter who had wandered through their lives unnoticed. As they pieced together the man's path, Harper's mind raced with implications. Who was he, and how was he connected to Claire? Connection remained elusive, but she had seemed troubled, perhaps caught in a world she didn't fully understand. Hours later, the storm finally broke, pouring relentless sheets of rain onto the pavement outside. Inside the station, the bright glows of computer screens illuminated the shadows, where hope and desperation danced hand in hand. They compiled the findings, cross-referencing records and compiling potential leads, the fragments of information expanding into more than just shapes, but into looming possibilities. Harper gazed out the window, watching as rain washed away the day's doubts. The storm seemed to cleanse, to renew. In that moment, he felt invigorated. A break in the case was at hand, and Maplewood was on the verge of uncovering its darkest truths, as the threads of Claire's life began to come alive once more. The suspect. The rain poured heavily through the night, teeming down in sheets, leaving the streets slick and shimmering under the flickering streetlights. Detective Harper, fueled by the potential breakthrough, convened his team to discuss the emerging suspect, the figure from the convenience store footage. They gathered around a large whiteboard, which now bore the mounting evidence like trophies from a hunt. And in the center, an image of the shadowy figure stared back at them, challenging their resolve. "His name is Nick Reynolds," Harper announced, tracing a finger under the grainy image. "Local resident with a history of drug-related offenses and public disturbances. Nothing too serious, but he's gotten himself into trouble before." Officer Nguyen nodded, her expression contemplative. "He's known to hang around the hospital area occasionally." The others mentioned he's harmless, just a kid in his 20s trying to get by. However, the timing is suspicious. It is. Harper agreed. 22 years old, and he's got a delicate balance of desperation. I've seen that many times before. We need to talk to him. As the team organized their next steps, Harper felt the significance of the moment. An eagerness pulsed through him, blending with anxiety for what these conversations could unearth. Each voice crackled with determination as they coordinated plans to locate Nick. This was no longer a matter of gathering information. It was personal now. Claire's life, her spirit, demanded justice. The next evening, rainy skies shifted towards a dusky twilight. When Harper and Nguyen finally tracked Nick, down to a ramshackle apartment complex on the town's outskirts. The building loomed like a specter against the setting sun, its faded paint and brittle screen doors concealing the chaos behind hurried lives and uncertain choices. Knocking on the door, Harper's heart raced. When Nick answered, surprise washed over his features, quickly morphing into a mask of defiance. "What do you want?" he snapped, sizing them up from the doorway, his posture guarded. "We'd like to ask you some questions about Claire Porter," Harper began, watching the flicker of recognition flash across Nick's face. "We have reason to believe you might have seen her before she went missing." Nick's eyes darted to the side, a quick instinct of self-preservation bubbling beneath his bravado. "I don't know anything about it. I just keep to myself," he replied, voice shaky, though he feigned nonchalance. As the conversation unfolded, Harper probed for details, noting the slight despondency in Nick's voice when pressed about events surrounding Claire's disappearance. The echoes of fear played in Nick's eyes, a lingering dread, regret, or perhaps guilt, the kind that folded into the shadows. Both detectives felt the eggshell-thin air of tension hang heavily between them, weaving threads of truth and deception. Nick was only a fragment of the puzzle, yet the intensity of their interaction hinted at darker currents. Harper caught a fleeting look, a shadow passing over Nick's expression. Was it guilt? Recognition? For the first time, he sensed that the clandestine world surrounding Claire's death might be more intricate and interwoven with lies than he had initially anticipated. As they departed the complex, Harper glanced back, the clouds slowly dissipating to reveal the first stars of evening. One thing nagged at him. Something in Nick's demeanor hinted at untold secrets, lingering regrets, and perhaps a truth far more urgent than the brittle facade he presented. The chase had intensified. The clock was ticking, and they were close to uncovering the hidden darkness that loomed over Maplewood. The trial. The day had arrived. The courtroom was a solemn arena, the air thick with tension as the small crowd of onlookers gathered, whispering in hushed tones. News of Claire Porter's murder had rippled through Maplewood like a stone dropped in water. The fallout felt in every corner of the town. As spectators filled the wooden benches, the atmosphere crackled with a mix of anticipation and despair. Detective Michael Harper watched from the back, his heart heavy as he mentally prepared himself for the proceedings. It felt surreal, watching the once hopeful community transform into an audience of judgment and trauma. At the front of the room, the defendant, Nick Reynolds, sat with a haunted expression, flanked by his defense attorney. It was a mask of youthful recklessness, fading under the immeasurable weight of the charges he faced. First-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and harassment. The proceedings began with opening statements. The prosecutor outlined the evidence with a steady cadencia timeline of Claire's last moments. The digital footprint of her interactions, the surveillance footage that had pulled Nick into a web of suspicion. Each word was a knife, chiseling at the collective heartstrings of those present who had loved Claire. As the trial unfolded, Detective Harper watched carefully, noting how each witness brought layers of complexity to the case. Jenna, Claire's co-worker, broke down on the stand as she recounted the late-night phone calls, holding back tears with a trembling resolve. The tremors in her voice echoed the vibrant spirit Claire had once been, amplifying the grief like a swelling tide. Then came Nick's testimony, a mix of bravado and self-pity, painting himself as a mere bystander, a good kid, misunderstood by circumstance. He described his fleeting encounters with Claire, claiming genuine care for her well-being, entangled in drug use and desperation. His attempts to discredit the evidence and reshape his narrative rang hollow, like echoes of a man trying to escape the fiery chaos he had contributed to. As the jury deliberated, The tension hung thick in the air, weighing on the shoulders of everyone present. Detective Harper felt the burden of their trust. Justice must be served not just for Claire, but for a community desperate to reclaim its narrative. He spent sleepless nights poring over the details, fearing that a single misstep could dismantle the fragile thread of truth they had woven through the investigation. Finally, the day of the verdict arrived, and the atmosphere in the courtroom thrummed with apprehension. Harper sat with clenched fists, eyes riveted on the jury as they filed in, their expressions unreadable. The words echoed through the chamber. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the second degree." Emotions erupted, a chaotic blend of relief, heartbreak, and anger. Claire's family wept openly, their grief transforming into a quiet determination. They had faced the abyss and emerged, if only slightly, deeper in understanding a world riddled with pain and loss. As for Nick Reynolds, the boy who had once cut through the innocence of Maplewood, he stared blankly at the gavel pounding down a final verdict that would seal his fate and shatter the fragments of Claire's legacy. Detective Harper felt a quiet sense of closure. Justice had been served, but the scars remained, etched into the fabric of their town. In the days that followed, Maplewood began to heal. But Detective Harper knew the aftershocks of Claire's tragic story would ripple through the lives of its residents for years to come. The memory of a spirited nurse who had touched so many lives now lived on, not just in the pain of her absence, but as a beacon, urging them to hold on to resilience in the face of dark. The aftermath. The sun rose several days after the verdict, peeking hesitantly through the remnants of a storm that had swept through Maplewood, leaving patches of sky clear but dark clouds lingering in the corners of memory. The community grappled with the fallout from Nick Reynolds' conviction, a tapestry of grief and relief woven delicately into the fabric of everyday life. The trial had stirred a reckoning that went beyond Claire's death, revealing vulnerabilities that ran deep within the town's soul. Detective Harper found himself at the heart of these reflections, lingering at a local cafe as he sipped his coffee, observing life return to its normal rhythm. Children played in the park across the street, their laughter billowing like a soft wind. But Harper noted the heaviness in their parents' eyes. They were all grappling with the reality that violence had touched the sanctity of their small town, an echo they would carry quietly within them. Weeks passed since Nick's sentencing, yet the community bore its scars. Grief still coursed through Maplewood like a hidden river, quiet and unseen, but powerful enough to reshape the landscape. Memorials began to spring up, small shrines of flowers and notes adorning the community board outside Maplewood General, each one a homage to Claire's spirit and a testament to the lives she had touched. As conversations bubbled around him, Harper reflected on the whispers of change that followed the trial. The town was compelled to confront the underlying issues that Claire's death had exposed: the prevalence of addiction, feelings of isolation, and the shadows of neglect that hung over so many families. No one expected the conviction to single-handedly resolve these problems, but discussions flourished at support groups, town halls, and community initiatives sprang to life as residents sought to foster connection in the wake of tragedy. One afternoon, Harper found himself standing beside Claire's mother, Mary, at a candlelight vigil organized by the community. As they lit candles in Claire's memory, Mary spoke softly about her daughter's passion for helping others, her commitment to nursing's echoes of pride laced with profound sorrow. "Claire would have wanted us to come together," Mary said, eyes glistening with unshed tears, "to ensure that no one feels alone, because that's how we lose people." The energy in the air shifted that night, illuminating the shared resolve of Maplewood's residents as they lit their candles and shared stories. Strangers embraced, bonds blossomed, and what began in darkness found its way toward a flicker of hope. Each person present was a thread in a tapestry that had been left unraveling, and as the candles flickered, it felt as if Claire's spirit was guiding them, urging the community to find strength in unity. Harper himself emerged from the weight of his role, watching as the town he had served began to reclaim its narrative. The aftermath of Claire's death had carved paths that connected those who felt lost, while simultaneously exposing the vulnerabilities woven into their lives. No longer merely a crime story, this was about healing, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to protect one another in an imperfect world. As autumn progressed, each new day became an affirmation, a promise that while loss could shape the landscape, love still had the power to bloom within the crack. Maplewood would carry Claire's legacy forward, honoring her light by embracing the connections that every life could bring, refusing to let the shadows snuff out the hope of brighter tomorrows. Reflection. As winter descended on Maplewood, a blanket of snow cloaked the town, muffling the sounds of life and casting a serene hush over the landscape. Detective Harper found himself in the quiet solitude of his office, the hum of the heater casting a gentle warmth against the chill outside. He stared out the window, watching the world through a frosted lens, and reflected on the tumultuous journey the community had taken since Claire's tragic death. Though the verdict had offered a sense of closure, it had also unearthed scars that had long lain dormant. A collective awakening resonated within him as he remembered the faces of those who had gathered at the vigil, the flickering candles a testament to love and resilience. It was a diminishing light in a dim world that reminded everyone that they were not alone in their grief. Harper recognized that as a detective, his role often felt like navigating through endless shadows, searching for clarity within the murkiness of human nature. But here in Maplewood, the shadows were not merely something to be unraveled. They had given way to a community that dared to confront its vulnerabilities. There was strength in the connections forged in the aftermath of tragedia continuation, of Claire's legacy that echoed loudly against the silence. As the first snowflakes began to fall that day, Harper felt a weight lift slightly within him. The echoes of heartbreak had transformed into whispers of hope, underscoring the importance of support and kindness. He resolved that moving forward, his work would not only serve to uncover the truth behind crimes, but would also advocate for compassion, understanding, and healing in a world often clouded by darkness. Claire's story had reached beyond tragedy. It had lit a spark that flickered alive in the hearts of the townspeople. A reminder that even amidst loss, love would always find a way.